Hello, welcome back to my channel. So, let's be honest, if you're a frequent viewer of my channel, you are probably also a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's. Not because I make Five Nights at Freddy's content, but just because if you're like me, which you might be, then you are also a young adult that's still a fan of some of the things that you loved when you were 13. Because let's be honest, sometimes the media you discover in your early teens is some of the best media you'll ever discover. And something that came out when I was an early teen was Five Nights at Freddy's. On one fateful day in 2014, a point-and-click survival horror game was released, the premise being that you, as a night guard at a Chuck E. Cheese-esque pizzeria, have to last 5 nights on security detail as the animatronic mascots of the restaurant try and attack you. Simple in premise, but with the combination of the hinted lore and the boom of gaming on YouTube in the early-ish 2010s, Five Nights at Freddy's became a worldwide phenomenon, and the franchise began to grow, with the second game coming out that same year, I think just 2 months after the first game, a book announced to be in the works, and an announcement from Warner Brothers that a movie adaptation of the game was in the works just 8 months after the game's release. And when this was announced, antidepressant time! Why'd I say it like that? Oh, that was fucking so annoying. Jesus Christ. And when this was announced, 8 years ago, mind you, it was actually looking pretty promising. Film adaptations of video games have a notoriously bad rep, for good reason, but several factors had the FNAF movie looking like it was set up for success. Firstly, Warner Brothers designated the project to a company called Vertigo Entertainment, who had just done the massively successful Lego movie. Warner Brothers had also entrusted the FNAF movie with Seth Grahame-Smith, who is a writer that mostly works on horror fictions. He wrote Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies and Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter, both of which have had film adaptations that Seth had also worked on in addition to the movie Dark Shadows. Seth would also go on to work on the newer It movies and the Batman and Ninjago Lego movies, so he's pretty cool actually. And he was also slated to be the first director of the Flash movie, but we don't want to get into the Flash movie. I'm already slightly off topic. Point is, Seth's hands seemed like the best ones for the FNAF movie. And in addition to that, there was also the fact that Warner Brothers had just done the first Conjuring movie, which was a massive success. So things were looking pretty good for the movie for a while, until we just stopped hearing about it. And not just for a few weeks or a few months, but 3 years, until 2017, when it was announced that Warner Brothers would no longer be working on the FNAF movie. That doesn't mean that the project was canceled, but it was up in the air in regards to if it was still going to be picked up and by who. Several companies had tossed their names in the hat? Tossed their hat in the ring? Whatever. Several companies tried to get the project, but Blumhouse is the one that officially took over the project and put it back into production. After years and years of development hell, Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie, is coming out in this year of 2023. And as the title of this video suggests, I have some theories, some hopes, some anticipations, and I'm going to be putting them in a bingo sheet for funsies. And now I'm going to present to you the bingo sheet and explain my predictions, because I've already obviously made the bingo sheet. Also, just to avoid any confusion, I do not think that all of these will happen at once, right? Like, if you're confused because some points contradict each other, it's because these things are just things that I could see happening, not things that I want every single one of these things to happen, right? I don't think every prediction can happen at the same time. I hope that made sense. Here we go. First on the bingo card, which I'll put like right here. First up, green tinted color grading. In simple terms, color grading is basically what you do to footage to adjust the color, like the highlights, saturation, curves, etc. And for some reason, I am just picturing this grungy, greenish color grading for scenes in the pizzeria, and also maybe even blue tints in footage outside of the pizzeria. And that was the prediction. That was easy. This is probably going to be a short video. Next, Matthew Lillard carries. I fucking love Matthew Lillard. He's on the wall over here. This big black poster is a Scream poster. There he is. That's our boy. And he has been casted as William Afton. And not to be naively optimistic, because this is a video game movie, and I've never seen a good one of those, but I truly, sincerely feel like he is absolutely going to crush this role and be one of the strongest points of the movie. Regardless of how good the actual movie is going to turn out, I just feel like Matthew's going to put a lot of passion and character into the role, and I'm very excited about it. Next up, no cameos. Maybe this is a hot take because I've seen a lot of people on social media thinking that people like Markiplier and MatPat and other creators who really domineered and helped the game get to its initial online popularity will have a cameo or small role in the movie. And I don't think that's going to happen. Not because I think it's a bad idea, because I don't, but because I have a suspicion that this movie is going to try to be very, very serious to the point where it takes itself too seriously, despite it being based on a game about a knockoff haunted Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know, just some things that I've heard like people say that are involved in the project, like, you guys aren't prepared, we aren't holding back, we're gonna be as scary as possible. For some reason, it makes me think that it's going to just take itself seriously to the point where it goes over the top in a bad way to try to appeal to older audiences or people that aren't familiar with the game. I hope I'm wrong, truly, but I can't lie, I do see a scenario where they go the route of like, don't think this is some baby movie because of the baby game. This is a real scary movie, and we're gonna prove it by being too melodramatic and have unnecessary gore or something. Plus, aside from that, I think this has been said by quite a few people, but I think that they would know that throwing in Markiplier, of all people, could mess with a lot of people's immersion. So for those reasons, I don't think that there's gonna be cameos. Next up, Foxy animatronic will look the best but be seen the least. I think with Foxy's original design being used as a basis for the movie's design, it would be very easy to make a super creepy animatronic and make it look kind of like dingy and unhinged at the same time to fit the character. And I can also see a scenario where the animatronics are treated more like bosses rather than working at the same time like in the games. So they're introduced sequentially, and Foxy's hypothetical introduction is teased several times in the movie before revealing his full character. So that's why I think that he will look sick as fuck, but we won't see that much of him. Next up, won't stick to game lore exactly. This one has like a double meaning. On one hand, if they don't stick to the game lore, it'll be because they don't want to do an exact copy of the games, so they'll keep the main and the important story beats while adding their own new ideas, which I wouldn't mind. I think that it would actually be very understandable to change some things, but on the other hand, this kind of goes back to that fear of taking the movie too seriously and wanting to appeal to more than just FNAF fans of the game, so they distance themselves from the game by creating basically their own story that's unrelated to the original lore, aside from the animatronics being haunted. And to be fair, I don't think that'll be the case, and I also don't even think that that's going to be the end of the world if they do it, as long as they do it right. But I just think that that's a possibility. Next up, decent jump scares, but the movie won't be that scary. So, fun fact, I'm a very big fan of horror, and that's why I'm also very critical of horror, because there's a lot of hot garbage out there, and I want the best for the genre that I love deeply. And something that irks me personally about horror movies is when they aren't actually scary, they just play a loud noise to jump scare you when the thing that happened wasn't that scary, if that makes sense, you know? Like, if the noise wasn't there, would you have jumped? No. And I actually don't think that that's going to happen in the FNAF movie. I think that they're going to have some really well executed jump scares, and also probably a few cheap ones, but that's kind of a given. And going back to the thing I kind of talked about earlier, just the way this movie's being talked up, for some reason, like, is Uno reversing in my brain, and it makes me think that it's not going to be that scary, which I know doesn't make that much sense, but that's my prerogative. I don't think the FNAF movie is going to be like one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, but I do think it'll be scary. I hope. Next, set design will be full of Easter eggs. While I don't think that there will be cameos, I think that there will totally be props and things in the background that reference other FNAF media and pieces of lore. I really love sets that are full of small details to where you can have things that you can point at and go like, oh hey, that's whatever thing it is. And I think that with something like FNAF, it could be so easy to add little Easter eggs in the sets like that. So yeah. Next, they will give the animatronics voices. Please don't do this. Or if you do it well. You might have caught on to this by now, but some of these predictions are in the best case scenario, and some are in a worst case scenario. And this is one of the worst case scenarios. I just worry that adding their voices would remove a level of fear, especially if the voice doesn't match the character, and it could also even make it like goofy in a bad way. Obviously, FNAF isn't a stranger to having animatronics that talk, but personal opinion, I think it's scarier when they don't for the most part, and I think that in the context of a FNAF movie, I think it would make more sense if they didn't talk, since it's harder to sell the concept of FNAF in live action without it feeling kind of goofy. And I think that's all I have to say about that. Next up, Josh Hutcherson doesn't sell it. I have no idea why I have this feeling, because I have literally nothing against Josh Hutcherson, but something is just telling me he isn't going to give it his all. I think it's because, to me, he radiates like tired dad energy, which I don't even know if he's like a dad, but that's just the vibe I get. And that's my truth in my video on my channel, okay? You know what they might sell though? Random product placements. Don't ask me why I think this. I don't know, I just do. Like, it just makes sense in my brain for them to have a few subtle but clear product placements. Like, I'm picturing like a soda or like a cleaning supplies or like a security thing, like a flashlight with like the logo clearly on it. I don't know. Next up, Josh Hutcherson dies. This is one of the 3 possible endings that I have in mind for the movie. And yeah, I think he could die. Random chase scene. So I think it's a very safe prediction to say that this movie isn't going to be an exact recreation of the first game, in the sense that Josh isn't going to be just sitting in a security officer's room for basically the whole movie. I think they're going to treat the office more as a home base and have him explore the dark, spooky pizzeria, and maybe also have him sneaking around, hiding from the animatronics when he realizes that something isn't right with them. So I definitely see it possible that at some point, Josh is chased by an animatronic and it's really close. You know, is he going to get bit or is he going to get into the room and slam the door? And going even further, I would predict that the animatronics that could chase him are either Foxy or Chica. Next up, well-timed or absolutely terrible comedy, no in between. Kind of self-explanatory. I think with a concept like FNAF, it's hard not to allow your project to be a bit silly at times. And I also like when there's a little bit of comedy in horror. When it's done right, it can make the movie very enjoyable. But the when it's done right is the hard part. So yeah, like the name suggests, they're either gonna nail it or absolutely bomb. Next up, movie bad. Sad face. I don't want this to be true, but it's totally very possible. Next, animatronic follows Josh home or something. This kind of pairs with the prediction about not following the game lore exactly, but I can see a scenario where in order to add variety and scares, they change the scenery and take inspirations from FNAF 4, because let's not even fucking lie, it is the scariest one. Suck my non-existent cock and balls, I'm literally right. But anyways, this kind of goes into the idea that Josh isn't going to be tied to the office the whole movie. I just see them wanting to have multiple locations, and I think that removing the animatronics from where people are used to seeing them is a very cool idea. Next, movie shockingly very good. See, I told you that some of these bingos contradict, and I actually really want this one to be true. Next, they sexify an animatronic, parentheses, Freddy or Chica, and parentheses, don't, and parentheses. Don't do that. I don't think they will, given how they've talked up how scary the movie is supposed to be. But again, anything's possible. Anything's possible. You know, what's that from? Reading Rainbow? Anyway, next up, too fast-paced. I don't really remember the reason I thought this when I made the bingo, actually, but I imagine it came from the idea of, like, the games start slow and gradually get very intense as the game goes on. And there's the possibility of the movie not really matching that escalation, which I think it should, just because horror does tend to have that natural escalation. And I think that that's, like, in my opinion, obviously, the way to do it. But if it's done right, I don't see an issue with jumping into it early on or getting slow at bits. So yeah, a lot of these points dumb down to, if you do it right, it's not a problem. Next up, end credit scene teases a sequel. Self-explanatory. Next up, good score. I don't think it's been announced who is going to compose the score, but I don't know. Something tells me that they're going to have a really good score and a good use of strings and the water phone to create, like, a really tense atmosphere, and I'm looking forward to it. Next, I cry? Question mark? To be fair, this isn't difficult to achieve. I cry all the time, and because of that, I think that just, like, seeing this thing that I've been obsessed with for, at this point, almost 10 years put onto the big screen might make me a bit emotional, because I'm a baby. Next up, they burned down the pizzeria. This is the second of the 3 possible endings that I mentioned earlier, the first being Josh Hutcherson dying, and they hire a new night guard, and the cycle is just set up to continue. The second is that Josh burns down Freddy's, and the third isn't on here, but I'll say it while I'm on topic. The third is that Josh quits to pursue the truth about the Freddy's franchise. Next up, any daytime footage will be on gray, cloudy days or in winter. This is oddly specific, but if you've seen the movie Prisoners, one of my favorite movies of all time by one of my favorite directors, fun fact, then picture that. And that leads us to the final square on the bingo. Credits roll, Five Nights at Freddy's by the Living Tombstone plays. This is a joke prediction, but I would actually scream and clap like a white person when the plane lands if that happened. Not fucking kidding. And those are my predictions on my bingo for FNAF. There you go. That's all I have to say. I'm so excited for this movie. Like, I really am. This is, I think, the movie I am most looking forward to this year, other than the Barbie movie. And Megan. Not gonna lie, I do want to see Megan. Fuck all the haters. I want to see Megan, and I think it's gonna be good. And that's my fucking truth, okay? I'm gonna have coffee because I haven't had coffee today yet. Thank you for watching this video. If you like the video, like the video. If you like the video, comment on the video. And if you like the video, subscribe to the video maker. And also, if you're watching this on January 16th, wish me a happy birthday. Okay, bye.